regardless of the outcome, just the joy that you experience of building something from nothing. I'm sure you have experienced it, right? As entrepreneurs, that's the thing that gives you the high is being able to create. And look, I think where I am in my career, kind of think about how to positively affect many people's lives, right? Not just the workers that work in our client practices, but also our own employees and their families, and how we can create opportunities for people that in tough labor markets like we are experiencing right now, it may be harder to come by. So on a day-to-day basis, Keenan, of course we think very much about how to add value to each employee of every one of our clients. And it's brick by brick that you have to build value to your customers. And we've already seen virality within the clients that we serve and how they have been able to refer us to their friends, their family, so on and so forth. But to answer your question, yeah, I think this has the potential for the first time in businesses I've built where I felt like, I could take it all the way.
All right, everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the All Innovation, the AI podcast. I am your co-host, Keenan Hart, and I'm here with my trusty sidekick and co-host, Dante McLean. We are incredibly excited to host the CEO and founder of Stitch PEO today. Now, Stitch is a purpose-built PEO to serve independent medical practices nationwide. Raj, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Keenan. Thank you, Dante. You guys are amazing. Thank you for having me on the show.
Man, we are so excited to talk about kind of the emphasis of Stitch PEO, because one of the things that we recognize is benefits, employee support, services. The space is changing and it's ripe for disruption. And so we'd love to kind of know the origin story of Stitch, all the stuff that you guys are doing, and the critical service that you guys are playing for those independent medical practices, and the biggest difference that you guys are making for them. So, we're incredibly excited. Dante, why don't you get us kicked off?
Yeah, Raj, to kick things off, if someone were to stumble upon this episode and double click on it, what are some of the things that you're hoping that they take away from this conversation we're about to have?
Yeah. First is independent practices and independent healthcare groups are the backbone of the US healthcare system. Without them, we will all end up spending a lot more money, probably not receive the level of service that we need, right? There's a time and place for where large health systems play a role, Dante and Keenan. But independent businesses and small businesses, small to mid-sized businesses are a very thriving part of this ecosystem. And it's very important for us to be focused on the workers that work in those settings, because we believe happy employees lead to happier patient experience. Happier patient experience is what leads to thriving practices. And that's been an important part of this. And look, when you think about a 10 to 50 employee independent healthcare group, to keep employees happy, they have to provide great benefits. And today, if you go to the market and you say, hey, I have 10 employees, 50 employees, whatever, you're just going to get crappy plans and really horrible rates. And that's the reality of what happens in healthcare. And we wanted to band together independent healthcare groups so that they can achieve higher economies of scale on all things related to employee benefits. So better medical plans, better dental plans, better vision plans. And you just can go down the list on all the employee benefits that will help improve employee engagement. That includes professional development. Don't just think about just from a benefit standpoint. And that's what we do as Stitch, is to bring together the purchasing cloud by banding practices together, getting better economies of scale, proper HR, certified HR expertise to go along with it, and payroll, and a number of risk and compliance items that are important for medical practices to thrive.
One of the things that I was just thinking about was kind of an aha moment is the name Stitch in itself. Is there any intentionality in being able to stitch together some of the gaps and the holes that we see in the
Yeah,
landscape of benefits and all that kind of stuff?
yeah, definitely is, right? It can be used as a verb, just like we all say, hey, have you Googled it, right? We hope someday medical practices talk about stitch as a verb. Um, but beyond that, right, whether it's a dental practice, whether it's a medical practice, the surgical suture is something that, when you think about that, is something holding stuff together and holding and repairing anything that requires that type of stitching. So the name Stitch was a play on both of those items, being useful as a verb as well as conjure up the image of a surgical stitch.
I love that. It's painting a picture in my mind, and it just created the aha moment for me. And I'm sure everybody else who's listening
Yes.
and watching to this as well. One of the things I think would be incredibly valuable for the audience is we see Raj here today, but we recognize that this is not where we started. So why don't you kind
Yeah.
of talk about your history as being a founder, startup, iterating and creating something like Stitch, so we can kind of give everybody a little flavor to your expertise and your understanding.
Yeah. You're taking me back in time, Keenan. So I was a techie slash nerd way back when. I went to undergrad and masters in hardcore computer science before AI was hip, artificial intelligence was hip as it is now. It was hip back in the late 80s, early 90s, and I'm dating myself. So I did a lot of work in AI back then. And, graduated college to become a hands-on techie for a mid-market IT firm based in Chicago. At 28, was given the opportunity by an incredible CEO to run a very large P&L. So that literally took me from hands-on keyboard techie to business management and entrepreneurship in some ways. After that, I came out when I turned 30 and had the itch to do something on my own. Joined with two amazing friends to build a small services boutique. That was entrepreneurial journey number one in some ways. Second, we built a software company that grew to the Inc. 500, 5,000 fastest growing private companies. That was in the sourcing and procurement space, so very different from what I'm doing now. Was again very, very fortuitous to be in the right place at the right time. Found some incredible mentors at some incredible Fortune 500 companies that took me as a young-ish minority business entrepreneur under their wing, sent me to the Tuck School of Business, sent me to the UCLA Anderson School of Business for management development programs, and so I've learned by not just doing it but also putting myself in places where I can continue to further improve my skills. From there, I built a software as a service in the patient experience and patient payment space called Health iPass.
So in there, you mentioned that you had the fortuitous time to be in the right place at the right time. Now, when I think about how technology, business, and everything changes across the landscape, I hear a lot of founders and CEOs say, I was at the right place in the right time. How much do you feel like luck has played into your overall success in your kind of journey, even before what we were doing with your current org?
Yeah, I remember listening to a podcast, and it's one of those TED Talks, right, that talks about what leads to successful companies. And they said, is it the idea? Is it the entrepreneurial team, right? Is it the CEO? Is it how much funding they received? So on and so forth. And the conclusion was timing is everything. And it's one of those things that it's hard to sort of describe. As the saying goes, every idea has its time, and timing is so very critical. Yes, there is probably some element of luck, but I attribute it to a lot of perseverance, right? Um, Before we started Stitch, before we started Health iPass, before we started CVM, all the companies have built, there was an incredible amount of preparation and work that went into looking at the forest from the trees and the weeds. And especially when you are outside in, like I was all three times, to be honest, right? I wasn't a sourcing and procurement expert to have built CVM. I wasn't a healthcare domain expert before I started Health iPass. I guess I shouldn't say that now, having been in it for 10 plus years. But the idea of I've always been a client of a PEO, but never a PEO operator. So in that sense, it was new for me, Keenan. But there's a lot of preparatory work that goes in, and each of these experiences prepares you, like I said, to see the forest from the trees and understand whether there is a large market opportunity to build a very good business, providing an incredible service to where there is an unmet need in the market.
I feel
So yes, luck was there, but I think there's a lot of preparatory work that kind of goes into what makes one launch a company.
it's interesting. I always hear the saying, the harder I work, it seems like the luckier I get. And it's almost at that
Yes,
intersection of preparation and opportunity where
100%,
luck really comes together, right? I want to
100%,
I
100%.
want to talk a little bit about the opportunity that we see in front of us in healthcare. So I've been in
Yep,
the healthcare space since 2014. I've recognized that sometimes bad patient experience comes as a symptom of the root cause of employees and healthcare professionals not being happy, right? And you touched on that
100%.
in a little bit of our conversation. So
Yep.
why did we choose to indulge in this space with independent practices to be able to have the biggest impact possible instead of just creating another gargantuan, if you will, enterprise system that goes after those large whales, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. No, great question. And you look at the U.S. economy as a whole and the U.S. healthcare, market segment itself, Keenan. The foundation is small and mid-sized businesses, right? As much as the big companies like Google and Microsoft and so on and so forth create employment, the bulk of the employment in the US gets created in the small business environments, right? Um, I think it's a very required and essential part of the US healthcare system, like I mentioned, right? When people talk about healthcare, everybody talks about the triple aim, right? Keep people healthy, improve the patient experience, reduce the cost. And if you say quadruple aim, add the provider experience because there's a lot of burnout and mental health issues and so on and so forth that happen, particularly in high stress environments like healthcare is, right? Um, One small misstep in a day for me as a professional, isn't life or death. But when I think about my family members and physicians and clinicians, it could very well be life or death, right? And if they don't have the attention to detail that I'm allergic to something, for example, it requires them 7 by 24 to bring, to have very high acuity, not be, nonchalant or, not have enough attention to detail on anything that they do. So, I think overall, when we think about this segment of the market, I think it's a very, very important segment. And it's a very rather large segment of the market. It's an incredibly large TAM. If I think about it from as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, right? It's an incredibly large TAM. And there's an incredibly large unmet need in the market. The system doesn't help them, if you will, right? If you're a small business, you'll never get the economies of scale unless you join a co-op. And that's what Stitch is. It's a co-op that brings together independent practices so they can get better value for their money in their spend on employee benefits to keep their employees happy. And like I said earlier, happy employees create happier patient experiences. And that's so vital, right? You don't want to be in front of a doctor. I don't want to be in the front of a doctor. Nobody wants to be in front of a doctor. We go there because it's required, right? And, um, it's just, and by the way, if you see a specialist, it may be many months before you get to see them again because of the backlog and shortage of qualified workers. And that one experience counts, and we got to make sure that people are in it, they're happy, so that every experience that that patient has is a really, really positive one.
I mean, if we think about the pivotal role that our healthcare professionals and independent practices play in our society, in our communities, they really are the
Yeah,
backbone, like you referenced to earlier. When I think about, because I also have spent so much time in the healthcare space, my girlfriend currently is about to graduate and be a physician's assistant. She went through the
nice.
rotation process of experiencing different clinical environments, large health
Yes,
system, emergency ED. She was like, it's so fast paced that it's almost exciting, but it seems like on the long term, I would almost burn out very quickly.
yeah,
And so she's going to be a part of a independent orthopedic practice because the pace
nice,
of it is slower, but also she feels seen and validated there by her employee or her employer, which I think is an
100%.
interesting insight as well, which you kind of touched on.
Yeah, no, it very much is. And I firmly believe that independent practices deliver the greatest value for your money as well as the greatest service, Keenan. And look, for some high acuity situations, like if I'm going to have a open brain surgery or whatever, right, or an open heart surgery for that matter, you need a certain infrastructure that only large systems can perhaps provide. And that's fine, right? But the 80, 90+% of the work that needs to be done is best served in local community based organizations that get to know people in their community, right? And can spend more time. And like that work setting certainly is an important one, like I said, for all the things that I mentioned before. And yeah, when I think about the unmet need in the market, the size of the market, it's a very, very important segment for us.
I would like to talk a little bit about your support system. So, in our previous conversation, you talked about family members being healthcare professionals and providers as well. When we started iPass and when we started Stitch, what was the reaction of your family members? Because I'm sure that they are independent practicing owners as well, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so large extended family of physicians, physicians, physician entrepreneurs. When I first started Health iPass, it was with one basic premise that the patient is the new payer. And unlike any other walk of life, the consumer or the customer doesn't understand how much things will cost. And the provider, particularly an independent provider, is chasing people for their money because people have high deductible health plans. A big portion of it is patient responsibility. They send them bills and more bills and more bills, and they just go to the trash can, right? And especially when it doesn't hurt their ability to buy a home or buy their new car or take a loan or whatever it is. So it's with that fundamental premise that we created Health iPass. And a lot of physicians, they are phenomenal at what they do, right? They go to school for many tens of years, a lot longer than I have been in school, right? Of course, we're all always in school, right, of real life. But and the business side of practicing medicine sometimes is not very well understood. I'm not a clinician, so I always look for administrative inefficiencies that exist in an ecosystem. And so with Health iPass, it was this idea of patient as a payer. And intuitively, it all made sense. Obviously, they're brilliant people. And once you say, hey, here's some unique insights, that's very easy for people to see. And many of my friends, many of my family members that are in healthcare, when I talk to them about Stitch, they said, Raj, you have this uncanny ability to kind of see where the puck is headed, right? And that's a little too much, but the idea is that there is an entire many millions of workers that work in this independent healthcare settings who have needs that are not being met very well in our current process, and that's what I saw as an opportunity, both from a ability to build a big sized business serving that need, But also the altruistic side of it is hopefully many families would benefit from what we are doing at Stitch. And that's something that we take very seriously. There is a way to attach ourselves to things that can hopefully move the needle in the US healthcare system. And ours is a small attempt to build a first of its kind, first to the industry type of solution that is providing this type of benefit to both the practice as well as to the employees that work in those practices.
I'm very interested to know, how big do you want Stitch to be? Because right over your shoulder, everybody who's watching this episode today, we can see the Inc. 5000 magazine in the frame on your wall in the back, your things that you accomplished with iPass. I only asked that question because my father was also in the Inc. 5000 magazine for the fastest minority-owned healthcare company back in like 2008, I believe it was.
That's amazing.
When he was in
Yeah.
Detroit. So a lot of synergies there. I'll use that word
That's
intentionally.
amazing. Yes.
But I would love to
yes.
know, like, what's your intention to grow Stitch? How big do we want this thing to be? What are we really shooting for?
No, great question, right? And when I think about that in terms of total addressable market, first time when we built a services business, we thought, hey, we could maybe get to 50 million and that would be like euphoric and amazing and so on and so forth. When I built CVM, we thought of our market size as being about 500 million. When I built Health iPass, it was about 5 billion as the total addressable market. And when I look at what the potential is for Stitch, it is well north of 125 billion with a B. And so each time you get wiser, your aspirations grow. And for the first time for the last year, I've felt like this can go all the way to being a publicly traded company. There is such an immense opportunity and an immense need. And, on a day-to-day basis, Keenan, of course, we think very much about how to add value to each employee of every one of our clients. And it's brick by brick that you have to build value to your customers. And we've already seen virality within the clients that we serve and how they have been able to refer us to their friends, their family, so on and so forth. But to answer your question, yeah, I think this has the potential for the first time in businesses I've built where I felt like, I could take it all the way.
I'm going to be really selfish here in the next couple minutes because we have a lot of other founders who listen to this podcast, who watch this podcast, and they're always thinking about, if I were on Raj's journey from being like, my first goal is 50 million, and then we talk about 5 billion. Now we look at 100 plus billion, right, as an addressable market, and we talk about going public. What are some of the mindset differences that you're deploying now compared to where you were in other vehicles of business? Like, what are the key differences that you kind of see either within yourself, with your team, with how you're approaching these problems? What are you thinking?
A great VC, pardon my French, but said there is a 3S rule in all things VCs do, right? Look for big ass markets, as in really big opportunities of unmet need in the market, Keenan. That's number one. Number two is to build kick-ass products. So whether it's a product or a service or a combination tech-enabled service, do something that really differentiates and stands apart, and not just an incremental, I got one little feature, but something that is fundamentally changing and potentially creating a new category of solutions. That's the second part. And none of that is possible unless you can build an incredibly passionate and smart ass team. And so those three things have been very critical, right? And of course, you have to make sure it's properly resourced. You're thinking about processes, you're thinking about scalability along the way, and simply have fun going through the process, right? Regardless of the outcome, just the joy that you experience of building something from nothing. I'm sure you have experienced it, right? As entrepreneurs, that's the thing that gives you the high is being able to create. And look, I think where I am in my career, kind of think about how to positively affect many people's lives, right? Not just the workers that work in our client practices, but also our own employees and their families, and how we can create opportunities for people that in tough labor markets like we are experiencing right now, it may be harder to come by. So just the fact that we are able to create employment, I think is a very positive thing in this current conditions, if you will, in the tech space.
I mean, I'm a huge believer in the fact that we are going to have to entrepreneur our way out of some of these challenges that we're facing. One of the
100%.
questions that I would love to be able to ask you came from a previous guest. Now, this individual is the CEO and founder of a company called Venture Circle. And what he wanted to ask, which was very powerful, was the CEO of NVIDIA recently was interviewed, and he said,
Yep.
someone asked him a question, would you do it again? And he said, if I would have known how hard it was going to be, there's no way. So my question for you is, with all the challenges that you've gone through in building the different companies that we've talked about today, would you do it again?
I would do it in a heartbeat all over again. I would be wiser, and hopefully I would do it different and better. Maybe better, faster, and with a lot less resource, because there's a lot of learnings that you go through the first time. My goal has always been to always be learning and hopefully not make the same mistake over and over. Right? It's a lot of learning that you kind of pay for as you go through it. The first time, the second time, the third time, Keenan. And look, there's a lot of variables that some that you can control, some that you can't control. But yeah, to answer your question, I would do it all over again. I would not have asked for any other career than the one that I have had, in terms of the joy of not just creating, but positively influencing all the people that have had the opportunity to touch along the way, and be touched the same way.
I want to ask you a question a little bit off framework, which is, you've accomplished some amazing things in your career. We talked about the Inc. 5000 magazine behind you. We talked about all your accomplishments, the different companies that you've been able to build. Can you remember a single pivotal moment of realization that all of this work that we've been doing was worth it?
Yeah, so I measure that, I think, in the experiences I have with people that I have touched or have been, touched by along the way. It's not, how much money you have in your bank. It's not what's on your business card. It's, it's people that you've had a positive influence over, either giving them a job through recessionary times that we went through when I built CVM, when I built Health iPass. There were some very tough times. And when people go on to make a lot more of themselves, just like the way I was given an opportunity early on, it's incredibly gratifying. I got a call from one of the individuals who was literally had taken his oath to become a US citizen. And literally from there, he'd called me to thank me. It's those experiences that you go, man, it was absolutely worth it. Not just worth it. I'm so glad that I've had the opportunity to be helpful to somebody.
I think it's an incredibly powerful statement. I mean, we've talked about the joy that comes from employing people, giving them the security and the peace of mind in tough times. I feel like is an incredible blessing, but also comes with a lot of stress. How do
Yeah.
you kind of deal with the stresses that come along with being a founder, CEO, operator of a business?
No, very insightful and great question, right? It certainly gets lonely at the top, as they say. So first is obviously your family and being very grounded in a certain value system. I've been very fortunate that my parents, my sister, my brother, they and my wife keep me very grounded. And I've had a moral compass, so to speak, that has always guided me in this journey. Second, I think very importantly is to surround yourself with the right set of advisors, both professionally and on a personal front, to make sure that not only are there people that can pat you on the back, but sometimes maybe even whack you on the head, right? When you get too ahead of yourself or what have you. And success begets success, I think. So making sure that it's not once a week, once a month, whatever, right? Every moment you have the opportunity to do something different, and sort of slowly make good progress. And maybe it's my faith that at the core of it gives me also this notion of karma. What you do to others will come back to you in some form or fashion. And like, I work hard, I'm very driven. At the same time, I also have the faith that there is something beyond what we understand that can control this. And so I don't stress out. And It's probably like a duck on water, right? Looks very calm on the outside. There's a lot of paddling going on underneath. But we try to keep it under the surface, so to speak.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful analogy, because even in society today, as a leader of an organization, a CEO, founder, we have to maintain that above the water level, like I would say, structure, right? Everything is
Yeah,
calm, everything is collected. We are confident in how we're navigating, but underneath, we are paddling away to kind of accomplish our goals. I want to, as
100%.
we kind of start landing the plane here to start ending the podcast, I want to ask you about technology. So
Yeah,
when I started our company back in 2014, we started as a telehealth company. So I was developing software and hardware telehealth to be able to go into healthcare systems and create virtual connectivity in the healthcare experience. From
yeah,
2014 until the pandemic, basically, it was a tough road because healthcare seemed to be lagging in the adoption of technology. But I know that you guys are developing technology to help create better experiences. So what is going on in your, I guess, lens of the future of healthcare and technology adoption? What are you kind of thinking from your, privileged seat?
yeah. So, I mean, I think very broadly about this question, Keenan, in terms of what is happening in healthcare on the innovation front, right? We are living in one of the most fabulous times, I say, because on one side, the human genome has been fully mapped. So pharmacogenomics is going to be certainly the future, combined with wearables, right? Everybody's got one of these things on our wrists or what have you, and increasingly you're going to see wearables that are fundamentally going to change. The idea of you mentioned telecare, telehealth, and virtual care. I mean, that is definitely here to significantly change. And unfortunately, it took a pandemic to teach us that care can be delivered. Not everything, right? Of course, if you have to have a surgery, like at least today, you'll probably still have to go to a surgery center or a hospital or whatever, right? But a whole slew of things can be done through telehealth and virtual care. Um, and of course, the unmistakable change in technology from an artificial intelligence standpoint and large language models and all things automation is a big technology transformation that makes it a very, very interesting. I also think in healthcare, you're looking at a bit of a shifting needs in terms of the workforce, right? There's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of need for specialists that is very, very dominant in healthcare. So that's why workforce is so important. And it's not just thinking about the staff shortages, but thinking about this constantly evolving care delivery models, right? Whereas before you had to go to the doc to get the care, through these advances, that's no longer the case, right? You've got so many incredible companies that have been built that provide team-based care, at-home care, and various models that are evolving this care delivery model. So the idea of future of work and the future of the worker and the needs of that worker is what we think about. And look, we can't be married to the same old models when you think about even something as simple or as very important, of course, as medical insurance, right? Of course, people complain today about, oh, I got a renewal, it's 23% increase in 2 3 years. I mean, at that compounded rate, right? My cost will double. And how do I function, right? When there is declining reimbursement on the other side, that you have to grapple with. And, we all know the answer, right? you know, Eat healthy, get enough physical exercise, get good rest, and have good mental health. We know the answers to that, right? It's just how do you turn that into habits and how to help turn those things into things that can help that workforce, both the employer as well as the employee. So we think holistically about what technology advances we can bring forth in terms of improving the employee well-being, the employee satisfaction with work. And that's a broad strategic HR question. It's not a software buttons and you click here and something's going to happen. There's a lot of people and expertise that needs to be applied in terms of thinking about this future of work question.
And maybe there's an opportunity for us to lean into things like artificial intelligence to help kind of illuminate the path forward. I think one of the things that we're sitting on, I want to go back to your analogy of everybody's wearing a wearable. There was a company that I discovered in 2020 called Human API, which is building APIs for all the wearables, and they're aggregating all this data.
Correct.
And I always think about the way in which healthcare has always been positioned in our country, specifically over the last time that I've been here, has always been reactive, right? Somebody comes to the front doors, we're reacting to their current situation. What about a proactive model where we can use the wearable data, we can use exercise habits, sleep data to be able to predict what is coming down the pipe for us? I think there's going to be a real opportunity to do that. Do you feel the same way?
Massively. You're right on. I think of today, it's not healthcare, it's more sick care. Mm-hmm. When you get sick, on an episodic basis, somebody's coming to you and saying, okay, I'm going to look at you, diagnose you, whatever, give you 3 shots, prescribe certain medicine, whatever, right? The reality is wearables are a massive opportunity to proactively monitor 7/24, right, all the time. And look, it's not just that, right? How your body might react to a simple 500 milligrams of Tylenol is totally different how my body reacts, right? That's why I said pharmacogenomics is going to be an important factor here. There is a dearth of qualified supply. So we have to leverage this technology, both the immense amount of data created by wearables, artificial intelligence as a technology platform that can catch things that maybe the human eye may not be able to catch, or at least augment the human intelligence with this machine intelligence, if you will. And the pharmacogenomics in terms of how to intervene at the right time before it gets too late, right? Whether it's cancerous situations or what have you. I think that's the future. You're going to see it. I'm going to see it. That's why I think very, very optimistically about such an exciting time that we are in, unlike maybe our parents or the generation before, right? Where, this type of advances had not occurred. And it's advancing at a rapid clip. It's advancing at a rapid clip worldwide. It's not just what happens in the US. Of course, we are leading that innovation. But it's just incredible time to see how we can go from very reactive sick care to a true healthcare system that can not only achieve, better patient experience, better health, number one, better patient experience, better provider experience, but also bend the cost curve, right? We have to look at every element of what creates costs, and even in a microcosm of one practice, right? People is their biggest investment. The employee benefits is the second largest investment that a typical medical practice makes. And these are things that we can positively influence and affect. And it's been very gratifying to see that play out even in this early innings with a number of clients that we've been fortunate to bring on here as Stitch, Keenan.
Well, I mean, I'm incredibly excited to see the impact that you guys are going to continue to have. And then hopefully one of these days in the near future, I'm going to say in your entrepreneurial journey, we'll see you ringing the bell at NASDAQ when you guys go public as well. So Raj, I want to I want to give you the last couple seconds here to pose a question for our next guest. Now, our guest is going to be a CEO, founder, business leader who is also thinking about innovation from not only technology, but also the thought of mind perspective as well. So what do you got for him?
Yeah, the big question that I think people are grappling with in this advent of AI is how does it impact the workforce in a negative way? What should we be watching for as a society? And what can we do proactively to make sure it's the right combination of machine intelligence and human intelligence in terms of how we think about the future of work? I would love to hear perspectives from other business leaders on this topic, and I hope I get to listen to that question being answered by your next guest on the show, Keenan.
Man, well, we're really excited to be able to once again bring that to the audience. Once again, Raj, all the work that you're doing at Stitch PEO and all the work that you've done in the past to bring yourself to where you're at today is an amazing journey to be a part of. And I appreciate you for coming on the show once again for myself and for my co-host, Dante. We can't thank you enough for being here, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And look forward to more success for both you guys and the rest of the audience in your show.
There we go. That's a wrap, guys. Catch you in the next one.